So, Luke, we're here. I thank you for coming, first of all.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to meet you. I've seen your name popping up in my feed for a while.
Yeah.
I've watched some of your videos. If I'm honest, I'm worried, I'm concerned over what's happened over the last 4 weeks in England, yeah? The racial divide, I think, the way it's going is dangerous. I saw your response. I made a video saying, look, some of my friends have fed out on me, some of my friends aren't talking to me. I watched your response and I listened to you, and I haven't heard anyone in the UK speaking as articulately on the issue that they've researched and understand. I've seen it in the United States. I haven't heard any UK voice. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to meet you, just find out more about you, because I've seen you popping up. We've never met, first time we're meeting.
No, we haven't met.
Have we?
Your MEP thing.
My MEP campaign.
I think Warrington.
Oh, Warrington.
Saw you at that.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Avi Emily.
Oh, Avi, yeah, he's great, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's great. Oh, mate, that was a mad month for me. It was a good month, a mad month. But, yeah, basically just to find out who you are, where you come from.
Yeah.
So, I know you've travelled down from Scotland.
Yeah, I'm a Brummie, born and raised. Mixed race heritage on my maternal grandmother's side. She's got some white lineage. Well, she is white. And my mother is mixed race, white and black African. And then my dad is Jamaican, so that side of the family is Jamaican. So I've got black lineage. Obviously, I look quite black. And I've got some white lineage as well. So yeah, Brummie, born and raised, currently living and working in Edinburgh.
Your view on Black Lives Matter, you go harder than me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, yeah.
You're not a fan, can we? Because to most people, in fact to all my friends, and in fact probably that everyone who's black in Luton, yeah, they're all automatically supporting this organisation.
Yeah.
All of them. I started doing my research. Can you tell me, why don't you support it?
Well, you've got two aspects to Black Lives Matter. You've got Black Lives Matter, the formal sort of organisation. That part of it is obviously a hard left / neo-Marxist, borderline communist, basically anti-white racist activist group. And then you've sort of got the sentiment of Black Lives Matter. So I think some black people will support both. Some black people will support more the sentiment, and they won't really know much about the activist group and the political side of it. And to be perfectly blunt, a lot of black people that are likely to support Black Lives Matter, they're quite ignorant. They don't know about neo-Marxism or communism or...
Can you explain what neo-Marxism... Because to some people, these words...
Yeah.
I've researched it, you research it. To some people, what's Marxism? What's neo-Marxism? What's this? What's that?
Yeah. So yeah, neo-Marxism, it's a sort of evolution, if you like, of Marxism. So you've got like traditional Marxism. People can look up what Marxism is. It's sort of a political and economics philosophy, and at the core of it there's a sort of power dynamic, and that power dynamic is expressed via the oppressor versus the oppressed, or it's sometimes known as the bourgeoisie in sort of normal classical Marxism. But neo-Marxism is a sort of development of Marxism in the current, particularly Western context. So it's more applied to more social issues along race and identities, and neo-Marxism has the core Marxist power dynamic and power dichotomy of the oppressor versus the oppressed. So what neo-Marxism does is it has basically white at the top as the oppressor and everyone else underneath as the oppressed. And neo-Marxists apply this to everything they look at. It's at the very heart of their worldview. So they see everything through that sort of power dynamic lens. And you can also apply it to the sexes, the genders, two genders.
Two genders?
So, men, yeah. Men are the oppressors, women are the oppressed, and they also obviously apply to religion. So basically, Christians or Christianity is the oppressor. All other religions are the oppressed, specifically Muslims and Islam. So yeah, that's what neo-Marxism is, a sort of development of just classical Marxism.
And growing up in England, because I'm seeing now, well, we're being told that this is a totally racist country. That's what we've been told.
Yeah.
Now, every time I turn on my TV, everything's about race.
Yeah.
You suffer from racism?
Probably there's ways to look at racism sort of systemically, institutionally. No, I'm not oppressed in this country. I'm not discriminated against in this country. I have every single right that you have and any other white person has in this country. So in terms of systemic and institutional oppression, which is the sort of core orthodoxy that the left and neo-Marxists like to assert, is a fact without it being a fact. I've not suffered anything like that. Obviously, people are people. You encounter individuals, so you may get a racial epithet or two, a racial slur. But my particular background, I grew up in a majority Indian, so Sikh and Hindu school. So that was the largest demographic. So just stuff you get in the playground as a kid, nothing that's major, nothing that does any damage, I would say. That was largely from Indians rather than white people, because Indians were the largest demographic.
You have suffered racism, but it's from Indians.
It wasn't, blackie, stuff like that.
Okay.
Just a handful of
What do you think?
Instances like that.
What do you think of the accusations that British police, at the minute, we're being told the British police are targeting black communities and unfair against black communities in the UK? What's your view on that?
I don't think it's unfair. Depending on who you are speaking to, that comes from the sort of left-wing and neo-Marxist perspective. They basically point to any discrepancy that is negative towards a non-white group or demographic as being proof and evidence of institutional and systemic racism. That's not actually the case. If you are speaking specifically on black people and levels of interaction with the law, the British judicial system and the police, the discrepancy there is due to black criminality. So the black demographic, specifically sort of young men, that's the portion of the black demographic committing the majority of the crime. So if you look at London, for example, I did a video detailing London knife murders and London knife crime for, I think, 2017 and 2018. For that video, I did a lot of research. I put in a Freedom of Information request to the Met Police, and I got some data, and for the knife accused, Afro-Caribbeans were 49% of the entire total. So just for context for people listening that aren't aware of the demographics of London, I think black and mixed race people are about 15 or 16% of the London population. So for Afro-Caribbeans to make 49% of the knife accused, for the crime stats, that is obviously massively overrepresented. So this is obviously reflected in terms of the engagement and sometimes profiling that the police does with...
When you stop and search and things like that?
Yeah, specifically young black males, because young black males are disproportionately the perpetrator if we're looking at knife crime specifically, but this is also true for violent crime in general.
69% I saw gun crime.
Yeah.
16, because this is the argument I keep hearing, they're harassing our youth.
Yeah.
And I think since we stopped stop and search, which Sadiq Khan pushed to stop and search, we've seen the most violence we've ever seen in our capital city.
Yeah.
It's exploded.
Yeah.
So do you think Black Lives Matter as an organisation, because they're all talking about racism from the police, or the black lives only seem to matter it's at the hands of someone who's white. That's what I'm realising. That's what I'm realising, because I looked, you want about statistics, I looked 2015, 2018, I went through the amount of people killed in interracial violence. White people had killed 27 black people in those 3 years. Black people killed 97 white people. But black people had killed 164 other black people. So, how come I've never seen Black Lives Matter as an organisation talk about, or protest, or try and raise awareness of, or try and stop the biggest killer of blacks in this country and in the United States, which is black on black violence. I think 94% of violence in the United States. 95% of black people killed in the United States
killed by blacks.
Is killed by blacks.
Yeah.
Why do you think they don't talk about that?
Because it's coming from a certain political persuasion, as I said earlier, hard left, far left, neo-Marxist, whatever you want to call it. That is where it is coming from. So it is basically a push to attack what they see as power structures. So the police is obviously an institution and a power structure. And if you look on the Black Lives Matter website, I think a core aim of theirs is to defund the police.
By defund the police, they actually mean get rid of the police.
So they are aiming for the police, so that should tell anyone with a functioning brain, what their sort of objective is, what the angle is that they're coming at it from. And then they want to smash the patriarchy. They want to... because that's the last thing...
I saw smash heteronormativity.
Yeah.
I saw on the website, it was a shock to me. I thought, they say that we're living under the force of heteronormativity. Every time I turn on my TV it's gay pride, it's gay actors, it's transgender actors in every single soap. I think, what are you smashing the norm? But why do you think they say you want to smash the norm? The leader of Black Lives Matter, the founder.
Yeah. She's
a black lesbian.
I think it's 3 black women, isn't it?
Lesbians, I believe.
Yeah, probably.
Lesbians who want to... So do you think that when all of these policies that are being pushed to smash the other one, which was to the structure of a family, like how many black... The thing that shocks me when I read through it, how many black people are going to agree with this? How many black people generally want to break up the family? How many black people generally think we want to smash the normativity of a man being with a woman?
I'd say most black people that are in support of Black Lives Matter, be that the group or the sentiment, are not in agreement with that. If you were to sort of poll every single black person in Britain or America, I'm pretty sure the data would show that they don't support that. Because it's funny you mention that, because it's one of the core sort of indicators for potential criminality and a general level of underachievement, let's say, or failure in society is growing up without a father, and fatherlessness and fatherless homes. And I think in America the stats are insane. There's something like, I think 70 or 75% of black families, black households are fatherless, don't have a father. So
which I think makes the children, I'm pretty sure I saw Barack Obama saying how many more percent it makes them at risk of ending up in prison and in poverty.
Yeah, it increases a massive amount, fatherlessness, and fatherlessness affects the black demographic the most. They, out of every race, at least in America, they have by far and away the highest level of fatherlessness, and they also have by far and away the highest level of criminality and crime. So the two are sort of inextricably linked.
Do you think that's been done intentionally? Do you believe to the black community in the United States? When I started looking at it, again, I've only started really looking at race recently.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at race and you look at the United States and I look at the Democrat Party, who do you think's behind Black Lives Matter?
Well, the name Soros always comes out, doesn't it? It linked with everything. I'm pretty sure from what I've seen and looked at, he is directly funding them. But I think it sort of predates Soros to a certain extent. You referenced a video I did earlier in response to you and you falling out with your black friend. In that, I sort of went into the sort of ideological history and connections that Black Lives Matter has with the Black Panther movement and the Nation of Islam, which were both black sort of nationalist, black separatist, black supremacist, if you like, or black power movements during the civil rights era in the US. So Black Lives Matter is like a descendant or relative of that movement, where it's sort of claiming to seek sort of black autonomy, if you like. So again, it's more ideological than purely racial, but there is also a racial element to it as well.
So when I'm looking at it, I just see it that the hard left could not win the ballot box. They couldn't do it. They can't do it in America, and they can do it here. So this is their struggle now. They want to whip everybody up.
Yeah. And
it's working very successfully. They want to divide everybody. They want mass anarchy on the streets. They want, and again, look at this. This is Black Lives Matter website. I was shocked and surprised reading this. We foster a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking. What? We can't. Everything I read. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
They want to disrupt the family structure, but this is the points that I'm surprised by, because again, I don't think any of my mates are aware of any of this. What do you think the future holds with Black Lives Matter? How powerful do you think things are going to become? We've got footballers, every Premier League football club now with it on the back of their shirts.
Don't get me started on black sportsmen in general. To be honest, they are embarrassingly ignorant. Like, you've got multi-millionaires literally doing activism for a far-left communist group and doing that, which is a black power symbol. I'm not even sure if a single one of these people
know what they're doing,
are aware that that is a black power symbol. So, like, black separatist,
supremacist,
a black version of ethno-nationalism. Black
it's
separatism.
Like the equivalent of standing up and giving a cake, like a similar salute.
It is, yeah. It's a black power symbol. It's a known, long-standing black power symbol. So you've got multi-millionaires doing activist work for a far-left communist group and doing a black power symbol whilst they're kneeling down. And you've got people like, obviously, the BBC, because the BBC's left and neo-Marxist leaning anyway, but outlets like the BBC praising it and categorising it and classing it as combating racism, fighting racism. If you've watched any of the recent Premier League football games, they obviously take the knee at the start prior to kick-off, get down on their knee, do the black power salute, and when you listen to the commentator, it's all about how Black Lives Matter is fighting racism and combating racism, and how it's a powerful statement, how it's a powerful message. I'm willing to bet that most of the commentators speaking on this stuff don't have a clue about anything we've mentioned here, don't know it's a far-left communist activist group that is anti-white, don't know about the black power salute and black separatism element of Black Lives Matter. So to me, really, especially having it here, it's just actually insane.
Do you know what it is? From 2014 to 2016, Black Lives Matter movement and their activists executed 11 police officers in the United States.
Yeah.
Just in those 2 years. I haven't even got the up to date. It's probably, you're pushing on 15, 20 people who have been murdered and executed in the name of Black Lives Matter. You've had all this violence. You've had the leaders come out, say they're trained Marxists. Anyone could do this research.
Yeah. It's all openly available.
It's all openly available.
Yeah.
It takes 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, say for example, I run an organisation called the English Defence League. Could you imagine the English Defence League had murdered 11 police officers? Yeah. Could you imagine, since George Floyd's protest, 700 police officers have been hospitalised in the United States, 700. Could you imagine the equivalent had happened here And then it's like every American football club running with English Defence League on the back of their tops and not being able to talk about it. I've actually found this issue harder to talk about than Islam. I've found Black Lives Matter harder to discuss than Islam. And just like many Muslims blindly defend Islam, I'm finding that many of the black community blindly defend Black Lives Matter simply because of the catchphrase. It's a catchphrase. Black Lives Matter.
It's clever.
Genius program.
Yeah, I mean the left are very good at sort of co-opting language and subverting and inverting the meaning of certain words. So they've co-opted anti-racist. So most of the left, as I know from first-hand experience, if you disagree with them, doesn't matter my melanin level, I'll be racially slurred. So these are anti-racists that are openly and overtly racist. Same with the anti-fascists, they act overtly fascistic. And the diversion and inclusion and equity trope that they seem to push or advocate for, that really means just pushing for fewer straight white males, is pushing for more BAME, which is black and minority ethnic, and pushing for more women, and pushing for more trans or gay or whatever.
And why?
It's far left, as I said, neo-Marxist basic power dynamics, the oppressor versus the oppressed.
Get rid of it.
Reduce the numbers of the oppressor, which is white,
Straight
males, straight, Christians. Get rid of them, boost up the other numbers. That is what it is. That's what neo-Marxism is.
But it's working, actually, isn't it?
It's very effective because a lot of people aren't informed. They don't realise that it's all language words and language tricks. So I live in Scotland now. You've got a racist Pakistani Muslim SNP guy, Humza Yousaf. You've shared a video on your parlour. He is openly calling for fewer whites in basically every senior position in Scotland.
Not based on who's good at their job.
It's nothing to do with meritocracy, it's purely to boost numbers so it looks more diverse. So these people they say they want diversity, they don't actually want diversity, they want fewer white people, him specifically. So
I saw his speech, you know. When I saw it, I then looked up the demographic of Scotland, and I saw that Scotland is a 96.5% white country.
Yeah.
And I found it amazing that there's this Pakistani standing up, going insanely angry.
Yeah.
Because there's so many white people in positions of power in a 96.5% white country.
And this is the end goal for the left. You can, in that clip specifically, you can hear the sort of vitriol and disgust
that he has, in
his voice.
You can hear it.
Oh,
white.
This many are white. It's like, it's a majority white country, Humza. Of course it's going to be majority white. And he claims to sort of represent BAME, which is basically non-whites. And a lot of the left claim to speak on behalf of BAME, but someone like that doesn't represent me. I don't stand for meaningless quota. I don't support any quota for any underrepresented group in this country. I support meritocracy. Best person for the job, most qualified person for the job. You know, the old Martin Luther King thing of basing people of character, content of character and ability, whereas the left, they want people based on their characteristics in positions.
Do you remember when I done the Support Soldier X campaign?
Yeah.
I spoke to a captain in the British military, and she spoke to me and said that she's been given her next promotion already. They're lined up for the next promotion. She said, I don't deserve it. I'm not ready for it. I'm black and I'm gay.
Yeah.
And she said, and she was so upset. And I'm talking to her. And she said, I'm being excelled because I'm black and gay. But I found it funny that, not funny, but that she was really upset. She was really upset. She said they are throwing me to the top when I don't deserve to be there.
Yeah.
And she knew she didn't deserve to be there. And I know we've seen this attack. We've seen this in the police force. We saw it in the fire brigade. Go back to the fire brigade 15 years, it was a totally different outfit.
Yeah.
We saw it in the fire brigade, And now we've seen that push through the military now as well.
Well, didn't they lower the I think there was some entry exam or something, like a physical test, and I think they lowered the standards so more women would qualify. So this is
a weaker army.
Yeah, it's when it's done via race. I call it paternal racism. So it's treating basically non-whites like either children or mentally deficient or mentally, inferior, if you like. So they need the boost, they need the hand up, the leg up, and they do this for women as well. Every group that is the oppressed, they like to do this for. But that girl was right to be upset, because I would be upset as well. Fortunately for me, I'm in a job where I was sort of objectively tested, had to do aptitude and IQ tests and other sort of tests, and the test scores you stand or fall based on your test scores. So there's no sort of artificial element that pushed me in based on my melanin level. So I 100% oppose all of that stuff. I think technically...
Did you see the bloke on Sky News last week? Did you see the black bloke on Sky News? I couldn't believe it. He lied and said that police are murdering black people in the UK. Yeah?
We'll get into that.
If we could talk about this, because I watched it. He said that black people, if you've seen black people work, they're probably the janitors.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And I watched it and I spoke to my mate, one of my friends, black lad. I spoke to him. I said, bruv, because we were all discussing this issue. I said, did you see it? And I sent him it. I said, watch that. Now, my mate there has got a very good job, 3 properties. Yeah? My other friend is probably on £80,000 a year. These are all black lads, growing up in Luton. My other friend's probably earning £70,000 a year, living in a £700,000 house. My other friend runs his own security company, has 100 employees. Yeah? They're not generous, man. They're not generous. They're all very successful. They've had the same equal opportunities as me, and they've all thrived and done very well. And I just watched it and thought, I don't see what he's saying. I really don't see what he's saying. And in fact, the more I've researched, I've started researching all of these numbers and figures to do with police beatings or police deaths in the United States, in America, and I'm sorry, it's a false narrative. And for me, it's a totally false narrative. Black people being told they're being hunted down in the street, literally by the police and murdered. Yeah. It's just not true.
No, and this really sums up perfectly the Black Lives Matter movement in a nutshell. Black Lives Matter from the get-go, every sort of election cycle. So 4 years ago, they sort of came to prominence based on the falsehoods involved with the killing by, I think, Derek Zimmerman, who was a Latino Hispanic guy. I forget if it was Mike Brown or someone else. But anyway, from that killing, the phrase "hands up, don't shoot" was spawned, and
Zimmerman's the one who, even now on Black Lives Matter website now, if you go and read now, it says he was white.
There you go.
It says he was white.
Yeah.
And you pick up a picture of him, and he's not. It's like, so that's a lie.
Yeah. So Black Lives Matter. It's actually quite representative of that whole movement and just everything surrounding it. It's based on falsehoods, it's based on lies, but as with most things the left likes to embrace and promote and rally behind, they don't care about the facts of the matter, and the facts are largely irrelevant. What is more relevant to these people and their supporters is the narrative, and the narrative is that blacks are being hunted down, killed by cops, are victims of systemic and institutional racism.
It works. As I said, majority of black people in the UK totally believe this. Totally believe that American cops are hunting down in a disproportionate rate black people and killing them.
Yeah.
And the figures don't show it.
No, and I did the figures, I did a breakdown of the data for Britain, because I saw it went kind of viral, or semi-viral anyway. I saw the clip on Twitter, and it's Sky News, so obviously fake news. So there's a Sky News guy on a Black Lives Matter protest in London, and he's in the street and he's walking with a black woman, and the black woman basically says, "I'm scared of my black son being killed by police." So I went and checked the data for the UK. So it's insane that we're even having demonstrations in the UK anyway. This is an American imported
race baiting
content and subject, yeah. But I looked at the data, and police killings by race, there's recent data that's come out for, I think it went over the past 10 years worth of killings, and black people made up about 8% of the police deaths or deaths in police custody. And what the media did, because the media is left-wing and likes to race bait and sell victimhood to people like me, you know, you're oppressed, the cops are out to get you. Look at these stats. Blacks are 3% of the population, but blacks are 8%.
So you're more than twice as likely to be killed in
so obviously predictable headlines, like not very bright stuff, low IQ stuff. So someone that doesn't really think about things or doesn't understand how the media works and the sort of political angle and the narrative aspect, they will see that and think, oh, over twice or 2 times higher than it should be, given the proportion of the population. So that's not really how you work out those stats. What you do is you look at the number or level of engagement that black people in the UK have with the police in the UK. So if you look at the British prison stats, and they've been quite consistent for the past few years, blacks are 3% of the population. For the prison population, they are 12 to 15%. So that is 4 to 5 times overrepresented. So the data for police or deaths of black people in police custody should roughly be 12 to 15%, because that is the number or percentage of blacks that have had literal arrests and convictions and are imprisoned by the British judiciary or British justice system. So
you're actually more likely, when I looked through the figures, you're more likely to die in police custody percentage-wise, 25% more likely as a white man.
Whites are overrepresented, so whites are about 87. This is a British context.
So we should be marching.
Yeah. So whites are 87%.
We should be smashing all the police up in London.
Well, this is the thing. Whites are 87% of the population.
Should we have murdered 11 police officers in the last couple of years over this?
Of the prison population, whites are actually underrepresented. They, I think, are 70-odd%. Of the police killings, I think whites were more. I think they're about 87% of deaths in police custody. So really, that should be around 70-odd%. So as you said, whites are actually overrepresented in deaths in police custody. That's in Britain. Blacks are underrepresented. So
you wouldn't think that, because at the minute we're all being told that blacks are being targeted, killed.
Yeah.
What's your view on the plane that flew over the Etihad Stadium? What's your thoughts on that? What did you think of it? Is it helpful?
I'm a bit of an edgelord, so I just found it funny, to be honest.
Yeah. When I went to meet this lad to interview him, I wanted to know if he was just trolling. Because that could just be, he could just be saying, watch this, just like this, like the tweets some people put out. He could have just been trolling. But he did have genuine reasons he said why he done it. But
yeah, so I thought it was funny first and foremost, and this.
But Burnley Football Club didn't. In fact, the captain was very angry.
Ben Mee made an impassioned statement strongly condemning the apparently racist statement that is White Lives Matter.
What do you think of that?
It's not a racist statement. I have no problem with it personally. Because I don't support Black Lives Matter, obviously the political aisle. I don't particularly support the sentiment either, not when you go into the data. I'm familiar with the data, you're familiar with the data. Most of the morons on these demos, they don't know anything.
Or the footballers.
The footballers are clueless. Lewis Hamilton, Anthony Joshua, they don't know anything. These are basically simpletons. So I don't support... Yeah, I don't care. They're simpletons. I don't support Black Lives Matter really as a sentiment. But I don't have any major issue with someone going with that if they want to. I don't really care.
Do you think you're going
Same with White Lives Matter. So personally, I go with All Lives Matter.
So would I. I think both are divisive.
Yeah.
I think the minute we start separating ourselves based on race for everything, doesn't help anyone.
But this is the goal of the hard left, the neo-Marxists, the training communists. They race bait deliberately, so stuff like Black Lives Matter comes about, and the rather predictable and obvious counter to that is it's all racial identitarian collectivism. So the left does it in favour of sort of blacks, and then, if you like, the right will counter-react by doing the same, but on the side of whites. So Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter. So it's all rather predictable.
Do you think that this has mainly exploded? Do you think it was because Donald Trump was winning the black vote in the United States? Do you think that, because I see this as a real last... You see, if Donald Trump, if he won the black vote, and I think he was winning the black vote, I watched Candice Owens, I watched what I'd say is a revolution within the black community happening. I've been watching it, following the story, to show that the Democrats were purposely holding them down, to show that basically they are still on the plantation. It's a Democrat plantation. Now, if Trump would have won this election with the black vote, it would have been the end of the Democratic Party, I think. They wouldn't have... That's what I believe, that if he loses the black vote, and he was coming so close, that all of this now, and I think there's going to be an eruption up until November. That's what I'm worried about. I'm seriously worried about England. I'm meeting you, I'm meeting lots of other people over the next week, because I am seriously worried about where this is going to take us.
Yeah. It's detrimental. Just touching on the Trump point, obviously all of this is politically sort of motivated, and basically since 2016 he was elected?
Yeah.
Basically since Trump took power, I think it essentially broke the left, or the Democrats, and the media is obviously that way inclined and that way leaning on aggregate, not every single bit of mainstream media, but on an aggregate basis. They are that way leaning. And I think Trump's victory broke them. And for Britain, it was sort of Brexit that broke the left and the mainstream media. So I think since those two events, everything has become very balkanised, really, along not just racial lines, but also sort of ideological and political lines. And this is sort of manifested in the liberal use amongst the mainstream media and basically the establishment. So clowns in the police like Mark Rowley and other people that equated you to Anjem Chowdhury. They are pumping out this far-right label all the time, applying it to anyone who basically supports a majority British view, such as reduced and less immigration.
You're far right now.
I am far right, yeah.
You're a far right racist. You're
Caught into them, yeah.
What do you think you're going to get? What, do you think you get a backlash standing here talking to me? What do you think some of the labels are going to be thrown at you?
I've been dealing with the racial identitarian collectivists on each side anyway for the past 2 to 3 years. So I'll get nothing new, really. I've had insults and slurs from each side of the aisle. So
I think it's massively important that the British public, and especially people on our side of politics, understand that Black Lives Matter and what we're witnessing is not the mindset of every black person, because that's all we're seeing. Well, I've not seen anyone talk against it. I've not seen any news reporters, I've not seen any celebrities, I've not seen anyone condemn any of the actions. Now, anyone who does their research is horrified by what the organisation is.
Yeah.
So I think that you're a valuable person to be talking up on these issues to separate black race from this movement. That's what I think. That's why I wanted to meet with you, to see over the next week. I'm going to be meeting lots of people. I hope you'll get involved. I want to organise a racism discussion with lots of people.
yeah.
And I hope you'd get involved.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose I'll just add that, there's a black demographic, but outside of that, there is no sort of black monolith. So there's no black monolith of thought. So I don't even know that a majority of black people support Black Lives Matter. in Britain anyway. I've seen no data on that. So I don't know how widespread amongst blacks as a whole in Britain that support is for Black Lives Matter. So I could very well be an anomaly in what I'm saying against it, or I could represent or have similar views to a fair amount of black people.
The problem is, I think that when
we're not getting airtime, you're right.
You're not getting airtime, and when I think a fair amount of the British black public realise and understand what it is, then we will. Now, America's had this for 8 years, 9 years, Black Lives Matter. Really, it's sprung in this country for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of celebrities, a lot of spokespeople from the black community in the United States who are so strongly against this Marxist organisation. But we haven't had time for our community and our country and our black community to be educated and understand and actually research what it is. We've just had a mass movement that's been thrown, massively funded, good, very, very good optics, pushed as though it's representing a fight for black people, when really it's a political fight for Marxism.
Yeah. Well, we've had, although it wasn't Black Lives Matter directly, we had, I think it was in maybe 2013, the shooting of a guy called Mark Duggan in London, and there were riots off the back of that. So that was along the same narrative that blacks are hunted by police and disproportionately killed and murdered by police. So that sort of level of civil unrest along racial lines is underneath the surface. It's always there to a certain extent.
So then they know they can whip it up.
So yeah,
they take historical problems.
It's like a wound, a sort of sore, and they know how to, rip the band-aid off and mess with it and aggravate it. So yeah, it sort of reared its head in that respect here before, but this is more.
Do you think that's why the police were getting on their knees in London? Do you think it's why the police let them smash up the Capital C? Do you think it's why the police allowed them to smash their way through? Do you think it's why the police didn't go out in riot shields or riot gear? Why they all stood there with their little hats on just getting beaten up? Because we watched it. Do you think it's because they didn't want another Mark Duggan riot? They thought if we go out with batons, they were scared?
I would class it as twofold. One, what you just said, appeasement, basically. And the second aspect of it is that the police, I think on aggregate, is left-leaning. It has sort of neo-Marxist power dynamics and power dichotomies at the heart of its views, so oppressor versus the oppressed. So especially its sort of head people and leaders. Cressida Dick, Neil Basu, Mark Rowley, we spoke of him before. All of these people are left-wing neo-Marxists. They hold those power dynamics at the heart of their worldview. So Neil Basu, for example, is on record in a recent interview saying he's pro-Black Lives Matter. If he wasn't a policeman, he said, he would be taking part in the demos. So that demonstrates the political position and leanings of the police. And you can see the double standards of two-tier policing. Well, your first-hand experience of that for the past 10 years, really. Yeah. But
I challenge any black man in the UK to show me that you've faced the persecution or the police harassment I have.
Not one alive.
I challenge anyone. Not one that's
Not one alive. But yeah, you can see the two-tier policing in terms of how they police the Black Lives Matter protest a couple of weeks ago, where they vandalised all the statues, and how they policed the far-right counter the following week, where the police were there all in riot gear, all ready to go. Weren't taking any, crap from anyone. And literally for the other Black Lives Matter one, they literally got people who were protecting the Churchill statue to move them out of the way to allow it to be vandalised. Same in Bristol, the Coulson statue that got torn down. There's a policeman on camera saying this. They literally allowed it to happen. They deliberately stood down as a policy to allow criminal damage and vandalism to take place. So they stood back in Bristol, they watched the far left/communist mob pull down the Coulson statue, jump on it like they were sort of ISIS members celebrating the toppling of a statue and historic monument, and then they threw the thing into the river. And the police all allowed this to happen. So anyone that's paying attention should be fully aware that there's a two-tier and double standard policing system.
What do you think of the cultural statue? What's your personal view of the cultural statue? I didn't know the history of it. I didn't know the attempts to get plaques put on it.
Yeah.
I didn't realise any of that. But what's your view of it?
I don't really have a view, to be honest. Am I personally offended that there's a statue of a slave trader? No. People get all faux indignation about it.
It's all white people.
Yeah, it's all faux the people that tore down the Colson statue.
There's only one black person out of 200.
I think 6 guys specifically pulled it down. They were all on camera. I think one of them was non-white. So it's like mostly middle-class Antifa
Colson funded the university as well.
He built basically a load of Bristol and a lot of...
Should we book the university then? It's been built.
No.
It's been built, and many people have been educated through the process of slavery.
But what they're doing, they've torn down his statue and they've started to remove his name from the outside of some buildings. So they're basically trying to do some revisionist history. But personally, I'm not bothered or offended by any single statue anywhere in this country, irrespective of what they did, whether they were a slave trader. And people don't know that slavery for a good while was legal, so this guy was not breaking the law. Yes, it was morally wrong, morally questionable, but the British fought to abolish slavery globally. So if these people cared about slavery, they wouldn't be fighting against something that has already been addressed. They'd be addressing current slavery, which, as we know, is... Yeah,
black people being
Muslims and across the Middle East and in Africa, blacks are still sold as slaves today in African and Muslim countries. So it's just politics with the left. They don't care about the issues that they are claiming to care about. It all has an end goal and an end game. So Colson is a straight white male. So the basic power dynamics.
Wonder how long I'll be here then. Mate, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
It's been interesting.
Thank you.
I felt when I first watched your video, I felt I was learning from you. As I said, I'm getting my head into all this now only because I think we need to do whatever we can to prevent a summer of trouble. I think that's what we're heading for. So
yeah.
thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers, Luke.
Cheers.